So my mother was sick for about a month with a back issue. We thought eventually it got so bad we took her to the hospital, and not even 2 weeks later she ends up dying. It was pancreatic cancer. It was shock. And then about 2 weeks after that was when they raided me, and I was told specifically because I asked my attorney many times. I said, are they going to raid? Is anybody coming to my house? I'll go and stay in a hotel if that's the case. I don't want my kids to be traumatized. And they
Right.
said,
You have
nope,
three
no one's
kids.
coming. They said they would let us know. And okay. April 13th, 2021, start, before 5 a.m., banging on my door like crazy. I put a piece of tape over my ring uh, doorbell. And I went down there and they said, we have a warrant for your arrest, but not for your premises. So I had my hands up and I said, I have kids upstairs.
What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back. Nightmare Success In and Out. Listeners, this is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? And folks, don't forget to like this thing up, share it out, subscribe. It really helps the show, and I so appreciate it. So who are we talking to today on Nightmare Success? Well, my guest today is filmmaker John Santilli, and he is a producer whose fingerprints are on projects ranging from gritty indie films all the way to major studio releases like Bill and Ted Face the Music with Keanu Reeves. He's been executive producer on The English Teacher with Julianne Moore, Missing William, and the thriller Held Hostage in My House. And of course, there's the Tales from the Crypt reboot. But here's what makes John a true nightmare success story. John went through his own personal nightmare, a federal securities fraud case that resulted in his conviction. His world collapsed, his career, his reputation, his relationships, his identity, all of it was put through the fire. It was kind of like the moment where most people just say, I'm done, disappear, never recover. But John didn't. He's fought through it. He survived it, and he's rebuilding his life piece by piece, not from hiding from it, from what happened, but by talking about it, learning from it, and continuing to create. Takes a little bit of grit, some resilience. I can't wait to jump into all this. Buckle up, folks. But before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll find that car for you, negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Folks, I want to share with you a powerful and moving new book you won't want to miss. My Name is Saffron. Voices, silenced, stifled, and taken away by author Saffron Gustafson. This isn't just a story. It's a journey through resilience, survival, and reclaiming your voice after being silenced for far too long. Saffron's story takes you inside the hidden struggles, the pain, and ultimately the triumph of refusing to be defined by circumstances. As Saffron was putting the finishing touches on her book, the prison she had just been released from, Federal Dublin FCI, was permanently closed because of sexual abuse of the women prisoners. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rise from the darkness of places, to find your truth, and to speak it boldly, this book will inspire you. Pick up your copy of My Name is Saffron today, available now on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Trust me, you'll be moved, challenged, and changed by her story. Welcome in, John. How are you, man?
I'm good, Brent. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. So I don't know that there's been 200 some odd interviews, and I don't know that I've actually had somebody on who has been in film. And like, when you were growing up, John, was that something as a kid? I mean, were your parents involved in that stuff? Were you thinking of how did that all come around for you as a kid?
Um, I think I think a lot had to do with probably my dad because I wanted to be. My father was a police officer, and I
Okay.
wanted to be a police officer, and I wanted to go to the FBI. But then when I was about 12 years old, I got type 1 diabetes.
Okay.
So at the time, I'm not sure how it is now, but at the time, like certain conditions, diabetes being one of them, type 1 diabetes being one of them, you couldn't be in the field like for the FBI. And that's really what I wanted to do. So and you couldn't, I don't think I think you could be a police officer, but you couldn't become a police officer. You could stay a police officer if you got it while you had it.
But you couldn't
You
go
could-
in with it.
Yeah. So that, and then the me and my father, I was a big sports guy. My father wasn't. The only thing we really had in common was I wanted to be a police officer, and we loved movies.
Well, I'm curious, what growing up in a household, when your dad's a police officer, what's that like as a kid?
Um, you become a little bit of a monster. You think you can do whatever you want. Your father wants to kill you all the time because, you're embarrassing him because you think, oh my, what happens is, you're 16, you get pulled over. They see the sticker on your car. They say, oh, who's the sticker? It's your father. And they let you go.
Hmm.
You don't even have to do much. And that happened a lot. And I think as a kid, you just get
Yeah,
sometimes
you
a
get a
little
free
cocky with it.
pass.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But, yeah.
uh, so growing up, John, did you have a pretty normal? I think you grew up east, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Born and raised, pretty normal. I have a sister, very loving household. My parents were great. I mean, it was a lower middle class. We always had food. We always had clothes. We didn't struggle for that stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, mostly a very, very good family. Um,
Brothers,
yeah, yeah,
sisters.
yeah, just one sister, an older
O-
sister.
Okay.
Yep, and myself.
So you move along. You got this. Your dad's a police officer, and you just early on decide that that's not going to be your route. Did you start thinking in high school about film, or did that? How does that come to somebody?
Um, I have, I guess the curse and the the blessing of being a bit irrational.
Yeah, that
They,
helps.
I've yeah, like I've always believed you can pretty much do whatever you want, and sometimes I'm not saying I'm always rational, but I've always believed you can pretty much figure out whatever you want to do and do it, especially at a young age. And I wanted to do that, and everybody thought I was crazy because we were in Rhode Island. Um, but you know, I was interested in it quite. Right after high school, I interned on a few films that were happening in Rhode Island, and I was waiting tables at the same time. And then I had gotten out of it for a bit, and I was teaching computers in like a nonprofit organization. And I did that for a few years. Met my wife there, and the program ended. It was DHS and United Way funded, and it ended. So I
Okay.
told my wife we weren't married yet. We had just bought a house. I said, I think I want to go back into film. And I was never in film when we were together.
She'd never met you in film.
Yeah. She comes from a small town. Her father's in construction, very, very similar to my family.
Yeah,
Um, and she thought I was crazy, but to her credit, and I'm very grateful, she supported me. She said, okay. And in her mind, she was panicked.
sure.
And so I had about, 7, 8 months I was collecting because I got laid off in that program. And I took I got on a bunch of films free. I would work for free. And then people liked how I worked and they would hire me at odd jobs and just work my way through that way.
Okay, so getting into film in Rhode Island, were you thinking that you were going to have to move to really get this thing going, or did you think that the being in film and doing that could all just happen where you were?
When I was younger, when I first got into it, so I did a movie called Outside Providence, and then I worked like a week on Something About Mary because they shot in Rhode Island for a
Oh
few
God,
days and
yeah,
we
I love
shot in
that.
Florida.
Great show, great
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. And I thought I was going to have to move at some point. But what ended up happening when I got back into it was the tax incentives were very strong in Boston, and Rhode Island. So a lot of films and projects were coming because, independent films, actually all films, follow the tax incentives. Wherever the tax incentives are, that's where they go and shoot. So there was a lot of business here and a lot of commercials, a lot of opportunity.
So when did you first think, hey, this is going to work for me?
Probably,
Because you've been in some big stuff.
yeah. Well, interestingly, I worked a bunch of smaller jobs when I got laid off. I got a position on a film called Telltale. And it was, and I always remember it because I'm a big sports fan, but it was, um, February 2018 because it was I started the day after the Patriots lost their perfect season to the Giants in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Um, so, um, I did that. I was an assistant production coordinator. So you have a production assistant, which is like the first position you go into, and an assistant production coordinator is you're in the office and you're, again, bottom of the barrel. And I did that, and the people that I worked with were, they liked me. I would get there before them, leave after them. I would end up taking some of the producers home and talking to them quite a bit. And a year later, I produced my first film with them, which was The English Teacher. So it
Wow.
was just, they gave me a lot of really good advice, and followed it. And I just, I was a hard worker. So I always made sure that I was busy, whether I was busy or not. I just looked busy. And that was one of the things one of the producers said. That was his advice. He said, I always act like you're busy, even if you're not. And he was right, because people like that. And I got there before them and I would leave after them. And
So
so,
what was your next step after that?
so from there, I was working on a lot of commercials, in between. And, I worked on a movie or an Italian TV show in Massachusetts. And then I worked on a second unit of a bigger film called Knowing with Nicolas Cage. And the production managers, the unit production managers or line producers, are the people that pretty much run the day in and day out of the production.
They make
Right?
they
They
make
run
everything go.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there were two people, the the gentleman from the Italian show, and then the woman from the uh, show Knowing that I did really liked me, thought I was a hard worker. I was starting a family, and they were super helpful, and they would kind of coach me along, and I would go for jobs, and I would get jobs that I wasn't qualified for, and I would talk to them every day during the job, before, at
Learn
the
up.
end, and they would tell me, you still got to do. You got to stand here. When everybody's wrapping up, and I stand there and just stare at them, so nobody gets extra overtime, and just really, I was very fortunate.
So you step into this, you start making stuff, and it's how long between the time we're talking about right now to when the nightmare started for you?
So I would say 2001, two. Uh, oh, I said 17 already. That was 2008, not 18.
Yeah. Yeah,
Patriots
I got
perfect
that. I figured that.
um, so I got back into film around 2006. So it was
Okay.
about 10 years, because 2016 is when everything happened. And it was for something I had never done before. It wasn't even in my wheelhouse as far as the film industry.
Well, let's talk about that because I mean, in fact, you just sent me something that almost had a timeline on it and
Yeah.
a chance to read all of it, but I mean, you really went through a lot and there were a lot of different pieces of people involved. Um, and you had partners and you never know, when you have these partners, when this all started kind of getting crazy, um, when did you feel like things didn't feel right?
So the show was 2016. Um, I mean, there were things, it was craziness when we put it together, because there was a lot of people involved, a lot of attorneys involved. And again, it was something I had never done before. Um, so I would say before it got to the point where I was concerned was probably 2018, about 2
Okay.
years. Yeah. Right
Well,
around.
walk us through what happened.
So we had ownership in the project, which was in Vegas, and my company owned. I was on the board with 3 other very large people or entities, and I was by far the smallest fish in that pond. But we had about 22% of the show, which was significant, and we had investors that came through us. Um, when everything was happening, originally we were going through another company, a management company who brought us the deal. They were getting kicked out, and we were asked to be the direct owners. We spoke to that company because we didn't want to circumvent them because they brought us to the table. There was a legal issue with an investor that they had. And they said, if you can keep us on as the management company, that's how we make our money. That's all we care about. So we said, okay. And we went back to the show and we said, that's what we said. And they said, he said, if you keep them on as a management company, we'll still come in and do that. They agreed. We were given a $2 million piece that ended up changing to 1.875. The reason that's significant is because that was one of the things they portrayed that I misrepresented. It wasn't, I was misrepresenting it. That's what we had at the time. Then it changed. So our documents had that, and then it changed. And I would tell people, this is what this says, but it's actually going to be this.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a different structure than I had dealt with. And it's actually very simple. I feel silly saying that I didn't understand it, because when looking back, it's actually fairly simple with limited partnerships. But I never dealt with one before with the GP and the LP. And we had an attorney that was creating all of our contracts, and he created the companies, which we always do. We always have a special purpose vehicle for whatever project.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I have John Santilli Productions and I have a movie come through, I create an LLC underneath me for that movie. So it's standalone, so that all the other projects don't get hurt if there's an issue on that project.
Mm-hmm.
We did that. Like I said, the attorneys drafted all that. Went back to the show and said we need to change the name on the contract because we're creating this special purpose vehicle. The attorney who I spoke to daily at that point said, there's a lot of, it's Vegas. There's a lot of things that we had to, I guess, do and qualify for. We had to be on the liquor license. So there's a lot of like red tape we had to go through. So he said, let's do it with the main company, and then we'll change it to the other company because they're not going to know the other company because it's a brand new company.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay. We did that. At one point, we closed the deal, and we have investors in our company, and we have investors in this limited partnership. And that's where it got a little bit wonky, because the way the contracts were created was very confusing. So just to give you an example, my company was Aloris Entertainment. Then my attorney created Aloris Entertainment LP, and then Aloris Entertainment GP, which was the general partner. So it was, and then the LLC was a limited partner in the limited partner. It was just very confusing. It's
And I guess the other part of the confusing part of it, it's all the same name, just with the back end of it's different.
That's why. And I didn't understand what everything was. And my partner one of my partners was an attorney. But this deal
do you know all these guys? Have you done deals with them and other deals?
No.
Okay. So this is a new thing.
Yeah.
And the people that you were in bed with were new people that you hadn't been partners with in the past.
The people on the Vegas show, the partners I had, I did. Okay. I was with them for a while. So my partner that was an attorney, his cousin was an attorney, and he created all the documents. And this was going on, like, as far as putting the deal together with one of our bigger investors, this was happening late at night. I didn't raise the money myself. There was somebody that came in and brought the investors in.
Okay.
One of the things that they said was,
that was his job to go out and get the dollars.
I was technically soliciting. I was. I'm not saying I wasn't, but
you delegated that out.
It wasn't me going out to people as it seemed.
Right.
So there was this guy that was handling all that, and he had a big investor who was one of the major investors, and going back and forth, I was, for several days, because we were right up against the deadline, for several days up until we had to close. I was probably up until 6, 7 in the morning. They were in LA, but I'm in Rhode Island. So I was up overnight, and my attorney and I'm sorry, my partner, who was an attorney, doesn't work after hours pretty much. So I had to handle all that, and I was not qualified. Let's just say that I wasn't qualified. I'd go back and forth with. I never talked to the investor directly, but this one guy I talked to every day. He'd go back to him and call me back and go back, and he wants this or that, and because of that, we ended up getting a really. They put something in the contract that we didn't know about, that I didn't know about, and basically took advantage of us.
Mm-hmm.
But because I didn't know, again, what to look for, my attorney wasn't available. So that was kind of the process happened. Once we closed with that person, he had come up with an idea of selling off our shares for a higher value, which you could sell them off, keep a piece, but because the show is now gaining attention, we can make money that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we ended up doing. And that's
Okay.
what ended up causing the problem.
So but that seems like that's something that people do all the time, where you get the show funded, you get it, then you start getting recognition, and then you can bring other people in, and you can, basically make money on the gap.
Yeah.
So when did it come to you that, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble?
So there's a lot of backstory, and I don't want to get into this. It's long and it's boring, but I had a dispute with the main investor.
Okay.
We also had a slate of shows with this management company, which was The Voice, America's Got Talent, and then another new show that they were doing in Vegas. And this investor was putting a lot of money into it, something around 24 million.
Okay. That is a
And
lot of money.
yeah, so when there was an issue with this particular investor, I probably let it go on for a little bit too long because I didn't want to blow the other deal.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up backing out of that anyway. Once he did, that caused some problems.
Like when all this was put together, and you looked like you had it set to roll, because you're done kind of the major pieces of it. When did you get, because a lot of times, in business, it's a funny thing in business when it's I've never been in the film business, but I know that in business, as an entrepreneur, you're building a business, you take risk. And sometimes you take risks that you've never taken before to try to get to the next step. And it sounds like to me, what we're talking about, John, is that you had an opportunity. It was a bigger opportunity, and you had to take risks to get this thing to make it happen. But because you had these partners, it kind of looks like it fell apart around it, and you were standing there, and they started making accusations to try to limit their exposure to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of truth to that. Yep. When we had an issue with one investor, what happened was he had backed out of that one, that larger slate. And he had sent us money for additional ownership of the Vegas show, because we were again selling them for a higher value, but he was just buying them one-to-one. So he sent us money, cashier's checks, to buy additional shares. After he backed out of the other one, I had a conversation with my attorney, and we had no contracts, but there's no agreement if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
a contract, right? Consideration of I can't remember what it is. So we sent him back his investment. It was $375. We sent him cashier's checks.
Mm-hmm.
They were sent in two, 100,000 and 275. So we sent him two, one for 100, one for 275. And then my attorney wrote a letter, sent it registered mail. He never responded to that. Fast forward a few more months. This was just before the show was This was just after the show opened. Fast forward a few months until when the first distribution was coming, and he had reached out to the show and threatened to sue them, sue me, said it was a Ponzi scheme, all this stuff. And at that point, that's when everything got really kind of crazy.
Well, and if I remember right, that's $375,000 was, and your bank recommended that you cancel those checks after 6 months. And as soon as you canceled those checks is when he said it was all wrong and you never had attempted to pay and all the other things that went through. So that's really
afterwards, like it was being checked every day. Yeah. And he said he canceled those.
So what happens next in that situation?
Well, so before we canceled those checks, we had sent them. He reached out. We had our first distribution. The distribution was paid out to all of the investors. Everybody who had a contract got paid by the contract. This investor reached out. I never got paid again by the show. They just stopped paying me. And that's what started causing problems with the other investors. During this process, that 6 months goes by, and that's when they added it was bank fraud because you didn't you cancel these checks. But I had a conversation with the bank manager who advised me of this. It's that claim, although it's out there, they didn't have a lot of room to stand on, or legs to stand on with that claim. But they did make it. About a year after that initial, when he initially reached out to the show, he filed a lawsuit and they filed arbitration on the same day. So they were obviously in coordination. He was a very wealthy person. He made it known to them that he'd be around and invest in future stuff and wanted this taken care of. And so just about a year after that, they filed on the same day. And then I had to go to arbitration. Eventually I had multiple attorneys, but it was just, it was expensive. It was very expensive and I didn't have the money. Eventually I ran out of money and couldn't fight everything. I was getting sued by, there's a lot of smaller investors, and this was what really bugs me. Everybody, like I said, everybody was paid when I got paid. I didn't get paid again. These people were brought in through someone else. They don't know me from a hole in the wall. They invest in something, get paid once, and then never see anything else, and nothing makes sense to them. Why aren't you getting paid? I don't know. They're just not paying me. Well, how can they do that? I don't know. They're just not paying me. And that's, that ended up pissing people off. And I don't, although it was frustrating, I don't blame them. I mean, how
right, because they don't know the inside of what anything is going on. They just know that they've invested money.
Yeah. And who knows what they were told. I know in the stuff that I saw, things that they were told. I mean, you talk to a lot of people. A lot of these people were approached with, did you know this happened? And then the story was told. So much after the fact, when everything's going on, when they're trying to indict you, this is the story. It's, did you know this person did this? And then they say these things. And of course, the people, what are they going to say? Like, they're going to be pissed off. They're not going to call me up and try to talk to me. And they don't know me. They just think I'm a scam artist now.
Well, you have some crazy things that happened. The FBI comes over to your place, and they weren't supposed to, and your kids are there, and your wife. When that day happens, what's going through your mind?
Well, they reached out for the first time end of 2020, and I wanted to speak to them. They would never speak to me. They would never look at anything that I had.
Well, yeah, you actually just wanted to show them what everything was.
Yeah,
you were wanting to cooperate to show what the situation was, because it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, there's an issue with a contract change that was they blasted out there, but I have an email from my attorney telling me to change the contract. Like, I asked him, I said, they didn't make this adjustment. He said, just change it yourself and redline it. I changed it. I didn't redline it. I was wrong. But I was
trying to do what the attorney was telling you to do. The intent was to try to make it right.
in the contracts, the way they were written, they put out there that I sold something I didn't own, for one, and that's, and half the news outlets out there just ran with that and said I didn't own anything when I was in the press releases. Like, I can't put myself in their press releases.
Right.
So they said I didn't own something, but the way it was structured, the contract literally said they're buying a share in this company that's owned by this company. So the main company owns them and it's passing them through this company. They're getting the financial interest. So I didn't design the contract. That's just the way it was, but it was all kind of lined up like that. So when they reached out, I wanted to discuss it.
The media version narrative is that you had designed a scheme through these random shell companies. I mean, it's what happens in these situations when something's complicated. The way that you're supposed to design things looks, if you put it up on a wall and they put it on the news, it looks bad because it's like, like in our case, we had an insurance company and we had an LLC in every state because we were audited differently. And that's just the way that it was. That's the way the attorney set it up. But when they put it up on a huge board and you're in 25 states, it looks like you're creating some kind of weird maze, and it's something you didn't create. It's just the way that legally that it's set up. So you get through all this, John, and you know that you don't have money to fight this thing. It's coming at you from different angles. Did they contact you and say, listen, we're going to indict you or we're going to arrest you? How does this come down for you?
No, they eventually reached out to my attorney. And that's when I had said that, let me just
turn myself in.
I said, I'm willing to, if I did something wrong, I'm willing to take responsibility for that. And I just wanted to talk. I wanted to show what I had. So because they were saying that, how they reached out was with a plea agreement. They sent a plea agreement to my attorney, which was terrible. And I'm like, no, that's crazy. So I asked to speak. They said no, and they came back with a worse plea agreement. And then that happened 3 or 4 times. But going through this, one of the things I wanted to tell them, well, the show itself, I had the ownership in the show that I had approached the show when things got really bad and people weren't getting paid. And I said, I'll step out or we'll break this one person off. He'll make more money because now he doesn't have to share with me. And then I'll keep my other people and everybody will make out. And they'll make out better. The only person that loses is me and my partners. They refused that. And then when the government had reached out, that was the show itself refused that, and the investor. The government, I had wanted to say yes. I tried to make this right. I was very naive. I thought that they cared about intent. So I said I wanted to show this, and then we had another very large production that I just finished. It was a live event, and it made a ton of money. And my other partner out west, and I were going to make quite a bit of money. And we said we can pay those investors back, so at least they're whole once that money comes in, and then we'll deal with fighting whatever we have to fight with the show and all that. And
was that the boxing event? That did really well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to stay on the outside mostly because of I was being sued by everybody. So my name couldn't be on anything at that point, which ironically, the reason my partner who did that wasn't on the actual company for the show was because he had issues before and he couldn't be on it. And I was the only one that was clean.
Yeah.
But boxing is not very clean itself. They don't really care as much, I guess. But there was a lot of money that came in. Long story short, I found that, he went and bought a very nice multi-million-dollar house with it. And I have no direct proof of this, that he made a deal with the FBI and the government. However, he was my business partner. We did everything together, and there was no statement or discovery from him in the case file. So that didn't make a lot of sense. So put two and
Which
two
is
together.
common. That happens a lot. They use one person to get to another person.
Yeah, and they didn't care. I mean, there was so much money coming in from that.
Mm-hmm.
It was more than enough to
Which
take care of people.
which
And
could have solved all the issues of whatever you were dealing with.
yeah,
So
yeah.
getting back to the plea agreements and the refusing the plea agreements, was the raid a shock?
Yeah, so my mother was sick for about a month with a back issue, we thought. Eventually, it got so bad we took her to the hospital, and not even 2 weeks later, she ends up dying. It was pancreatic cancer. It was shock.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 2 weeks after that was when they raided me, and I was told specifically, because I asked my attorney many times. I said, are they going to raid? Is anybody coming to my house? I'll go and stay in a hotel if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my kids to be traumatized. And they
Right.
said,
You have
nope,
3
no one's
kids.
coming. They said they would let us know. And okay. So, April 13th, 2021, they start, before 5 a.m., banging on my door like crazy. They put a piece of tape over my Ring doorbell. And I went down there and they said, we have a warrant for your arrest, but not for your premises. So I had my hands up and I said, I have kids upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
They brought me outside, and then I still can't get an answer on this. But then the agents just kind of all came in the house and went upstairs, downstairs after they just told me they had no warrant. But there was about maybe 12, 13 cars, 15, 17 agents. And I live on a small little dead end in a condo. It's not like I'm in this multi-million-dollar mansion. I live in a 3-bedroom condo at the end of a dead end on a very quiet street. So it was,
Chaos.
yeah, I didn't, there was, they knew I wasn't a risk or a flight risk or a danger.
Right. Right. And as we were talking about before before we hit the record button, they randomly just choose who and when they're going to do that. There's no set. It's just random.
Yeah.
You're it. So I know that had to have been horrific. Your kids are in there. Your wife's in there. You weren't expecting this. You obviously weren't expecting them to go in the place that you live. What was the next thing that happened?
So, after they I guess came through everything, they went upstairs and they said stuff in front of my wife and kids, told my wife in front of the kids what was going on, and took me in, booked me. I was there for not a
And
long.
the charge that you're being booked for is security, selling stock, selling shares, for whatever they say the wrong intent is, right?
It was wire and securities fraud,
Wire
and then
and securities fraud.
aggravated, this one was a shock to me, which I think they put on a lot of people, is aggravated identity theft,
Okay.
because that didn't make sense. I'm like, I didn't steal anybody's identity, but
Yeah.
it's the changing of the contract, they said, was
Okay.
aggravated identity theft, which I think that was probably my strongest defense, because I had so much proof that it was not.
Right.
No, it was
Right. And through an attorney.
yeah. But
So
they charged me with, there's like 10 or 12 counts. They put in the press release, and this is one of those things.
and they're probably agitated, John, honestly, because you turned down 3 or 4 of these plea agreements. So they thought, well, you know what? We're just going to go on. We're going to take him. We're going to scare the crap out of him and take him and see how he likes all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. But they put out a press release that said I was facing 182 years statutory maximum.
Okay.
Now, I didn't know the legal system very well. Most people don't. And I think we talked about this before. I said, nobody trusts the government until they put a press release out. Government puts a press release out, and
Everything's 100% true.
I see press releases. I can't believe so-and-so did. And I say, all right, stop.
Right.
You know better.
Yeah.
So 182 years, a few months after I was arrested, that the guy out in California with like a $600 million fraud, a Ponzi scheme,
Mhm.
Zachary Horowitz, gets arrested, and they put in facing a maximum of 20 years. Same
Mhm.
office, same prosecutor, like,
Yeah.
so, I think they pick and choose. There's something the guy didn't like about me. I don't know what the connection was, but there's something that he just.
So did you go in and out, or did they keep you there?
No, they tried to. They tried to say I was a flight risk, and luckily the judge said that's ridiculous. He has a family. He's not going anywhere. They took my passport. We were in Providence. I don't remember the weather. Like in my mind, it was like 0, but it wasn't. It was probably 40 degrees or something. But I'm in shorts and a t-shirt
Yeah.
and sneakers, and they said they would let me use the phone. They said they would feed me because I was a type 1 diabetic. Luckily, I didn't
Mhm.
have an issue. They didn't feed me. They didn't let me use a phone. They let me out of the federal building in the middle of, I had no phone, nothing, in the middle of Providence. And luckily, my attorney was about 4 or 5 blocks away, so I just walked there.
Mm.
But they just said, "All right, you're out. There you go." So
Wow. Well, let's jump into what happened after this, because I know you went through a battle, and I mean, you're here and you survived it. But let's take a break here. I want to say a lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation on Google. There is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results after a negative news story, to learn more about the Discoverability Company, go to discoverability.co. If you use the coupon code Nightmare Success, you can get $100 off getting started. This is a company that can help you, and they know what they're doing. Discoverability.co. And the Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group. John is too. And I can tell you, this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you are just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. For more information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Okay, so John, what are you thinking? I mean, your head has to be spinning, right?
yeah, I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest.
I mean, you're walking 4 blocks in cold weather in shorts and a t-shirt, thinking, "Holy wow!"
I think I was just I don't I didn't I didn't grow up sheltered. I'm pretty street smart.
Yeah, your dad
Um,
was a police officer.
yeah, and I've been in, I've been around some tough situations. Um I don't think that I didn't grow up in the hood. And I'm not like, I don't claim to be a tough guy. Um, but I've seen a lot. I've been around a lot. I think I'm pretty street smart. And I think a lot of that helps in business. Um, Totally naive to this. I was just so naive to this. I truly believed that the government, um, I didn't think the government told the truth about everything, but as far as the criminal justice system, I didn't think things went like this.
Mhm,
I really didn't. It. I thought you dealt with human beings, and it turns out a lot of times you don't. You deal with robots, and it's just, this is what needs to be done, and that's that. And they don't
mhm,
care about people. They don't care about families. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the victims.
mhm.
They don't. They care about how they look.
Right,
Um,
convictions,
yeah, yeah.
and that's how the promotion system works too. Which is it's unfortunate. I had Scott Rosenblum on this show a couple months ago, and he's been very successful as an attorney and taking cases to trial. And he said the only way that you can truly get justice, and he says very very rare, is that if you have a good judge.
Mhm.
And he said that's the only real way, because everything else is really all set
Yeah.
for wins on the government side.
Yes.
So when you get to that office of the attorney, what's he's saying? What's the discussion now?
So I went through so many attorneys, but I had 2 attorneys at this time. The other attorney that I had is the one who told me that they're not coming to your house. This attorney had told me you need to get somebody in LA, um, uh, uh, local counsel in LA, so
Mhm.
we can use them. And my mother had just died, so I said, "Give me a week or 2. Let me just deal with my mom, and my father is, devastated. So let me just deal with this and my kids." And his was pretty much, "I told you so,"
Mhm.
and I didn't use him after that. He was like, "I told you this was going to happen," and I didn't want
Yeah.
to. Like, that's not what I want to hear right now.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't appreciate that.
We need solutions.
He was
Yeah.
very much the attorney. He's a very good attorney, but he pleads. That's what he does. He
Yeah.
pleads everybody out. He's a former JAG, um, very accomplished. But uh, at that point, again, naive, I was hell bent on fighting. I'm like, I'm fighting this. I'm not. There's no way I'm pleading. So yeah, so he didn't have great advice. So my wife came and picked me up, and just
Well, so what
everybody
is your, I
shocked.
mean, your wife has obviously been supportive. I mean, she has to be in complete shock of what happened and
Oh
what's going
yeah,
on. You're a filmmaker.
yeah. This is not the world that we know. And listen, I felt the stuff that happened with my mother was awful, and of course I don't didn't want to see anything happen to her, but thank God it was before I was arrested. That's all I said,
Hmm.
because I to do that to her too, especially if she was sick. If she was sick and oh God, it was it was you really find out so much about people when you deal with
Hmm.
something like this, because it just people you're just friends with, or you think are you're close with or have your back, and you're not asking them to do anything. You're not asking them to lie. You're not asking them to even have your
Just
back
support.
physically. But just some people just disappear.
Yeah.
They're gone. And
Well, and some of it is by design. That there's a lot of people that you don't even know that have a fear of being around somebody because somehow they could get, it falls on them. The
yeah.
feathers, lands on them. And in some cases it really does.
Mhm.
And we don't even know if they're talking to those people, that you can't, because you're not in discussion about this. And a lot of people just of the government just has a fear factor. It can create a wall around you and talk to people to scare them off that they won't even attempt to reach out to you because they think that somehow it's a fear of theirs that they could somehow get involved in. And I know that's a paranoid thing to say, but there's some people that actually do. And there's a lot of very innocent people that get tied up into a system just because they're around it. And so that fear is real,
Yeah.
but it makes you feel like you're on an island. And when you're dealing with something that you've never dealt with before, being on an island, not knowing what's next, the unknown is a place, I don't wish on anybody.
hmm Yeah. It's um it's a very lonely place. Um, you know, fortunately for me, um, I'm not great at this. I do my best, but when everything started getting bad, I started meditating. Always wanted to meditate my whole life, never really could, but I started meditating because I needed to do something, because I was a wreck, and I was I was responding very emotionally to everything, and it was affecting my kids. Something would happen on a Friday, the whole weekend would be gone. So
Mhm.
I started doing that, and I have a very obsessive personality, so I was doing that like crazy. That helped me more than anything as far as just perspective when everything went bad. I was able to stop at some point and relax a bit. And I have a pretty good ability to reframe things in my life. I think I always have. Um, it can certainly be negative, but a lot of times I get really negative and then I take a day and then I sit back and then I reprocess. And I was able to do that with this, and I was able to plan, and I'm very motivated by these things. I wish I wasn't. I wish I was motivated just by getting up and, wanting to have a good day, but I'm motivated by bad things.
Yeah.
So, I was very obsessive for a long time. I mean, I had to go through emails, and it's literally like close to 1,000,000 emails, because the
Yeah.
back and forth, and it's
Back
how do
and
you go
forth.
through
Yeah.
them? There was just so much minutia to try to figure out. I ended up getting an attorney out in LA who was a prosecutor in that same office, and he had just gone on his own, and I was one of his first clients, and I'm lucky I was, because we had a really good relationship, and he went way above and beyond. I got charged so much more by other attorneys. He charged me once, said if you could pay again, you pay again. If you can't, don't. And
Mhm.
I wasn't able to. I would have if I could have,
Yeah.
and incredibly grateful to him. but he was really good in walking me through everything, because so much of the stuff is you just don't. It's not just the research of figuring out every part of this and making sure everything connects, because you forget a lot of stuff. Like you don't, you're not trying to lie, but when you tell the story, I have to look back sometimes and say, did this happen or did that happen? Because there's so many little events. So he was great. He was patient with me. He spent an incredible amount of time. But one of the things they did was my evidence was under seal, and I had to be with my attorney to view it. So he's in LA and I'm here.
Mhm.
And I'm sure they do this to a lot of people, but you have this voluminous amount of evidence or discovery that you want to go through, but you have to be with your attorney. Your attorney is charging you an hourly fee.
Mhm.
So it wasn't really like, I want to be able to get up in the middle of the night and go downstairs and look at something that I remember and go through. So that was tough. But they said there was personal identifying information, but it was all my information.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't very
Right. Who's
few.
gonna harm? It's
Yeah,
me.
very few things were from other people. It was my bank accounts. It was my, like, I
Mhm.
didn't care. But so that was tough. But that's, I think, another thing that they do to kind of to make it more difficult. I think
Well, I mean,
everything is
one of the
designed
things
to.
when they have that kind of thing happen, John, is they'll put in, they have all those boxes, and they'll put boxes and boxes and boxes in the room. In our case, we had 12 million documents, so it's like that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then they know that you're looking for one thing, and they'll put that in like one file and 56 boxes, and
Mhm.
you have to go through all 56 boxes to find that one file.
Yeah.
And that's real. I mean, they can do that. There's nothing wrong with them doing that, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
So you get this attorney, you like this attorney, you start going through all this stuff. How long from the time that they take you and they raid your house, are you in a position to where you think you're getting resolution to this?
About a year and a half, maybe, before
Okay.
I pled. Before
Okay.
I pled, it was a year and a half, and um, my
And when
attorney.
you pled, was it a lot different looking than what they were trying to present to you in those original plea agreements?
Well, this is something I didn't understand, because my plea agreement was worse. When you read it, it looked worse. My guidelines were high. It was 70 to 87 months, and my guidelines before were like 40 to I'm not 48 or something. I don't remember
Mhm.
the exact number. But my attorney wanted me to do. He thought this was a better deal because it left several things open to argue.
Okay.
So several of the enhancements, and it was very aggressive, which I think also, I think it portrayed their side a little negatively because it was so aggressive for what they were charging. Like the actual charge and all the stuff that they were trying to say, and the guidelines were. I mean, I was up there with, like, with rapists. Like
Mhm.
it was high.
Mhm.
So he had wanted me to do it. I didn't want to. I was very adamant. I didn't. I was very against it, because I figured once I pled, that was it. So we went back and forth. He convinced me that it was the best deal. I can make out. He convinced me that I can make out with probation. And
Okay.
I'm like, I'm researching everything. I'm like, nobody gets probation with this. I said, I don't even qualify for it. And then he was explaining to me how variances work and departures
Mhm.
and all that.
Well, and him being a prosecutor from that office, he would know a lot more than most.
Yeah. So I said, I said, I agreed to do it. I said, the only thing I ask, I said, in LA County, there's 2 million people. My
Mhm.
town, there's a few thousand.
Mhm.
So I said, I'm not saying they don't have to they can't put a press release out. I said, but can they just leave my town out of it? So my son, who was in middle school at the time, um, doesn't get affected by it. So he said, I'll talk to him. So he talks to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor says, yes. Okay. We I go to California. I think it's September. We do the plea agreement. We take care of it. Go back to his office. Within an hour, I'm getting calls. They put a press release out, has my town in it, has everything. They just lied again. And the other thing I had asked was, can they like wait until I get back so like kids see this, I can be there.
Right.
And they put it out right away. They put everything they said they wouldn't put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then they told my attorney, "Oh, we tried, but you know, we couldn't
Couldn't
get
stop
it."
it.
Yeah. So it was just shitty. Regardless if I'm 100% guilty and I'm the biggest scumbag in the world, why do it to my kids? Everybody's going to know who I am. The business that I'm in, like the people that I work with, are going to know it's me.
Mm-hmm.
Why do it to the kids? I don't get
Yeah.
that. And you do
Collateral
that.
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you go to your sentencing hearing, what are you thinking?
So there was a lot of stuff that happened in between. And I think it had a direct impact on as there's stuff with the state of Rhode Island. And that was more brutal than the federal as far as my family is concerned. I don't know if you want me to go into it. I'm happy to go
Well, you
into it.
can, because they were two separate cases, but really the same thing.
Yeah. So I was charged with obtaining money under false pretenses in the state. And it was a really weird case because it was somebody I didn't deal with. And it was somebody that wasn't even the investor on the contract until the day of. And my former partner dealt with them. I went to dinner with them, emailed, talked to him. I didn't. I spoke to his lawyer. We negotiated a deal for a project that we owned, and we were doing it to get paid. That's why we were doing the deal. We were doing it. We get producer fees. We had it for a while, and it was a big project, so we were able to take an advance. Basically, what you do in that situation is you take an advance on
And
what
then
you're going to make.
perform.
Right. So it's more
Yeah.
risky for the investor because you don't know it's going to move forward, but it's worse for the producer because you're giving away a bigger piece of something for later on.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that. We had no issues. 6 months later, the guy had an issue. It was, I didn't want to get into all that. It was so complicated. It was just nonsense, but there was an issue. We were going to arbitration to fight it. My attorneys at the time told me the guy doesn't live here. He lives in like Sweden or something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you win, you're not going to collect anything from him. The company doesn't have any assets. Just bankrupt the company and plead to the award, and then you'll be done. So we did that. We also signed a side agreement with that guy saying that we would pay him if it went forward anyway, like he'd get his money, which it was going to be forward. I had a $20 million offer, by the way, on that project. I had a $20 million offer in writing, in email. I still have it. A few months later, state police come to my house. I was taking pictures on the last day of school with the kids to arrest me. Blown away. I had no idea what was going on. They arrest me. That was before I got indicted for.
On the federal side.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I had found that the federal government reached out to the state as well. They were
So
talking.
kind of all coordinated and helping each other through the process. Yeah.
Yeah. So that goes on for several years, where it's just pretrial. And eventually we get to the point where there's going to be a trial. So I told my attorney, I want the trial before my federal sentencing. I want to prove to the judge that I'm innocent.
Uh-huh.
My attorney, about a month before the trial, disappeared, would not respond to me, would not get back to me. The trial was on a Monday. On Friday, he reached out about the federal case to ask me some questions. And then I said, all right, can we talk about Monday, the trial? Mm-hmm. So he said, yeah, he said, Sunday, I'm working on this all day. So he said, as of Sunday, we should, we'll have a conversation. We'll go through all the stuff. And I was sending him stuff. I had that program I was telling you about before, that legal program. So I had the deposition questions. I had everything laid out. Sunday, doesn't get back to me, doesn't call me back, disappears. So now I'm worried I'm going to walk into court and I'm defending
without an attorney, without representation.
Yeah. So I get into court. The judge says it's going to be about a 5-day trial. The trial, we go into jury selection, which lasted about a day and a half, and the trial ends up being about 2 days.
Okay.
Before this, what he ended up telling me, what my attorney said was, he said, we're not going to put up a defense. I said, what do you mean? I said, we have all this. Yeah. He said, they have no case. They have the burden. This is a valid strategy.
Burden's on them.
Yeah.
If they don't prove their case, you'll walk out. Yeah.
Right. There was an attorney that I talked to. The only person I talked to was the attorney. They couldn't get him to come in. The only person that came in was the alleged victim. Said, okay, I didn't like it. I texted people. I was very nervous by it. My judge was a former federal prosecutor. Didn't like it at all. Very uncomfortable. So the trial was a day and a half. The investor got up there and lied, said we spoke, said we emailed. I have my computer on the side of me. I show my attorney, like, this is my partner. It's emailing me. I spoke to this guy, give me a call. I have everything in writing. I also have a contract, by the way, with this person. So there was multiple levels here. Even what he was saying, we had a contract for. So the charge didn't make sense based on the contract. But then he's saying that I talked to him, which we could prove I didn't. I said, pull my phone records. Attorney didn't do any of it. He confused me with my partner, whose name was also John. Okay. Is who we spoke to. Regardless of that, I still don't think we did anything wrong, but he confused me with somebody else, and they used that, and they said I spoke to him and I manipulated him, and I can prove that I didn't. It's right there in black and white. So the jury goes back, come back in an hour, find me guilty. And
this is before sentencing of the federal side.
And the prosecutor in that painted me out to be
a monster.
Yeah, he did a very good job.
Yeah.
This guy was desperate. He was gambling, which I was. But one doesn't have to do with the other. I can gamble with my own money. So he said he was gambling, he was desperate, and he was lying, and he crafted it very well. And my attorney was very much fact, right? In his closing argument, which they didn't hear any of that.
They're much more, as you know, the story is always better than just the facts.
Yeah. So that happened. To everybody's surprise, even to this day, the judge remanded me after that the judge on record said there's several appellate issues with this case because there were he made some errors too. He's like, but he
immediately remands you into custody.
Yeah, which, listen, during my trial, we had like a break during lunch once where he had a murder sentencing. The kid was convicted of murder, and he let him stay out for 60 days to get his affairs in order. And I had been on pretrial for 5 years, federal and state, not a single issue. I was a low-risk offender, which means I'd write something in, and he remanded me. And he did that because he knew that was the only way to make sure that he got me.
How long were you in?
So that was in October, and I was in for 89 days. And
what's that like?
So it was high security, and it was intake. So I was in the hospital for the first few days. I'm a type 1 diabetic. They don't understand type 1. They treat you like type 2. I had so many issues. I've never passed out before. I passed out multiple times, hit my head. I was taken to the hospital multiple times. They almost killed me. My blood sugar was over 600 multiple times. And the nurses, I have all the respect in the world for nurses. I love them. I go to the hospital. I think they're the most wonderful people. In there were two that were just monsters. They called us cockroaches. They would withhold insulin if they were mad at me. They claimed you're doing all these things. The I always thought going to prison, if I went, I would be a little concerned about my safety and, the other inmates, and we were being targeted. Not a single issue with an inmate. The COs were awful,
Mm-hmm.
awful. They would call you the most derogatory terms just entering the quad over there. So I was there for that period of time. We tried to get myself out multiple times with medical emergency bail. Um, judge judge just wasn't having it. We knew that was going to happen. We tried to get him to overturn it as a 13th juror. We tried to get it overturned on rule, I think 16, because he allowed evidence in that wasn't substantiated, and the jury used that to convict me.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't care. The judge said if I didn't spend the money so quickly, she would see my attorney. He would see my attorney's point. But I spent it too quickly. And my attorney said, but Judge, if I get paid on a Friday, I can spend that money on whatever I want. But he couldn't see that. The state police had the wrong bank records. They said I spent money on myself right away. I sent $45,000 to my partner. They said I sent it to myself. I moved it from my checking to the savings of the same business account. And then I wired money out through there. Everything was documented. They said they wanted receipts. I put up 101,000. It was $99,000. Oh, it was 100,000. I put up 101,000 in receipts without myself or my partner getting paid, just to prove to them that the expenses. We had the deal. We had all the stuff in place. Nobody cared. So what ended up happening was I had an appeals attorney, and I had to make a deal. I went in a few days before my 11-year-old's 9th birthday. She was devastated. They were devastated. Like, if I had expected to be remanded, or even for the trial to end that, I would have prepared them for something.
Sure.
I didn't even tell them about this
Right.
because I never expected this.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up making a deal to get out, which was frustrating because I got out 2 days before Christmas. This is why I did it. I had to pay that guy the money back, which that wasn't even the biggest issue. I didn't have it. So I had to borrow it. But I had to pay him back, basically pay for my partner getting paid and all that stuff. But the biggest thing was I had to waive my appellate rights. So they wouldn't let me out unless I waived my appellate rights, which is, kind of interesting that they do that. They didn't want to lose their conviction. They didn't care if I was innocent. They did not care. One other part to this, the person who made this claim against me had the attorney that I spoke to. He sued his attorney for fraud and malpractice in Chicago in federal court, saying his attorney did what he said I did. They had a settlement. His attorney brought in all other people as third-party defendants. He didn't bring in me. My name wasn't in there besides saying I owned the project. So if this attorney is at risk of losing his license, he's going to bring in everybody that he thinks had anything to do with it. He would have brought me in a second. Didn't bring me in. Why wasn't I brought into that? So it's just a frustrating thing because that then changed the whole dynamic of everything around me with people, because now I'm a habitual offender, and obviously everything I said on the federal was a lie because obviously I did this. And
Right. It just strengthens the narrative that they have out there.
Yeah. But having said that, and I said at the time, I got the worst possible judge in the state case. I got the best possible judge in my federal case, because what I was told by a consultant who has been around for a while, not one of the more loud ones, but he's been around for a while out in DC. He was very kind and spoke to me for a bit, and he said about my judge, he doesn't like bullies. He does what he thinks is right and doesn't care what anybody else thinks. And he has a very strong sense of family and obligation. And all of those things held true when it came to my sentencing. So my sentencing got pushed a few times because of that. And then other reasons. And then when we were in my sentencing after that, which was 2024, it was like June 2024, the government got all my records from the state, put those forward, said I was manipulating the system, sent in my healthcare records saying, I was trying to make myself sick to get out of prison. I'm a scam artist. And then they recommended, originally they were saying like 70 something months. They were recommending now 87 months. PSR still said 70, both times. The judge went through that stuff. I rebutted it line by line and showed that my medical records from the state contradicted themselves. They would say something and then there'd be something different written. So they would also do things in pencil because they think they would erase certain things. I was shocked because the one thing I've always heard about the government is they're very, very thorough. I don't think they looked at any of the records. I think they trusted the state, and that blew up in their face because I think that was one of the biggest factors for the judge. The judge knew I got screwed there, and he was pretty pissed off about it. And I think that worked in my favor. So I got pushed a few more times. We went out there, I think in that October. My wife and I landed. My attorney texts me. He goes, "I know you're in the air, but they just moved the sentencing." So a couple months, you go back, land again, same exact thing happens. So sorry. As soon as we landed in California, and then we went back in February 25, and that was the final sentencing.
And what happened?
I ended up getting 3 years. Was it not probation? I would say probation, but it's
supervised
release.
Yeah.
3 years supervised release with home confinement as a condition. Okay. But I'm allowed out for anything with my kids, my wife, mental health, anything with them, and my father who's been sick for a while, and work. And they've been very, very fair.
Well, I can tell you this. Everything that you just said about that judge is what Scott, I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the only way that you get justice is if you have a judge that is fair. And that's, it's just the luck of the draw, man. And you had those things that he was looking for, and also being this family guy, and it all checked the boxes, and he went with what he was going to do, not what they told him to do through their charging documents, which is unbelievable. And, it doesn't happen very often, John. I mean, I know your story, but even when I hear it again, it's just fascinating.
Well, and then I'm not sure if you knew, but then they appealed it. Did I?
No, I did not know that.
So
they appealed the fact that you got the sentencing that you got.
So my attorney was a prosecutor, and he was telling me, all right, they have 2 weeks before you're in the clear. So, but he was thinking when he was a prosecutor, we had 2 weeks to appeal. They had 30, but he just mixed it up. So I start looking and I see 30 days a lot. So I didn't say anything to him, but we get past it. About the third week I write out, I said, "Hey, Michael," I said, I think, I looked and I said, "Everything's saying 30 days. He goes, "Yeah, you beat me to it. I misspoke." And he explained that there's, is 30 days. So on the 30th day, they appeal.
So what happened with that? I'm sure you had to go through a hearing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when they appealed, I didn't tell my wife, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want, they went through enough at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to have to go through.
You're going to live on this one your own.
We just had great news, and I'm like, you got to be like again. So
yeah, it's all good. Everything's fine.
Yeah. So they had, I think, 30 days for their first brief, and the 29th day they filed an extension for 90 days. And all this is doing is, obviously there's a fear there, but all this
for sure
doing is just prolonging it for you. And you're like, come
Yeah,
on.
it's torture.
Yeah, this project,
Mental torture.
there's work I can't do until this is done.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
things I have to get moving forward on. So that went on until about 2 or 3 days before their filing was due.
Mhm.
And my attorney emailed me and forwarded their email saying, we suppose there's no objections if we withdraw our appeal. So I said, no, I think we're good. I'm not going to object to that.
No.
They did. And I was very, very good.
Wow.
I had looked up the statistic for them, for the government appealing a criminal case
Yeah.
in 2024, because it's not available for
Yeah.
2025. In 2024, the government, out of like 60,000 sentencings, right around there, they only appealed 21.
Wow.
So
That is a number I wasn't familiar with. That's incredible.
yeah, it's insane. So again, it made me think, and there's some connections.
Well, you know what's
something
about yeah, the crazy part of this whole journey you've been on, you've gotten the harshest part of the equation until you got to the judge, and that's where you got some realness and somebody that was didn't look at you, he looked at you like a person and what's really going on here, and then you got the best outcome at that point that you get, because hardly anybody gets that.
Yeah.
Usually they max you the other way. I had probation to 5 years and got 5 years, but so let's talk about now. I mean, you're in the midst of having really good news. They appeal the thing, that doesn't happen. You're on supervised release, but you're living your life. You've got you're a partner in Dial 9 Entertainment. What's going on in your world now, John?
So, I've been doing.
You survived a war.
I've I think it's real easy. I get frustrated with my wife and kids sometimes about this, and listen, they're just living their life. They didn't. My wife dealt with a tremendous amount. My kids, we kept out mostly, but I get frustrated, and it's we all deal with this differently, because I'm like, we went through something that was it was just a bad experience all around. It was traumatizing for a lot of people, different ways, and we are blessed. We got the best possible outcome you can imagine. So like when things happen, we get frustrated about these little things. A lot of times I can step back and say, you know what? It happened a week ago. I had reached out to Jeff. I forget what it was. Somebody said something. Oh, somebody did a podcast about me, and they just said I didn't own anything, and they just said a bunch of stuff that wasn't even remotely true. And I sent it to Jeff, and I'm like, I ranted a little bit, and then the next day I texted him. I said,
"This is Jeff Grant, the founder of the White Collar Support Group you're talking about."
Yeah, and he's great. So, and I wrote back the next day. I said, you know what? Sometimes I rant about these things, and I step back and say, I could be in jail right now.
Right.
And if somebody came to me and said, you have the choice to go to jail for 3 years or have 50 podcasts disparaging you put out, what will you do? I wouldn't even think twice. I wouldn't even blink. I would just say, podcast, do 100. I don't care.
Yeah.
So like you get in a situation that's good, and then that happens, it gets frustrating, but it's just perspective, and you're not going to change everybody.
It's definitely perspective. And I would assume that, John, in your business, world, the world you're in, it's all creative talent. And if you can bring things to the table, I'm sure that the experience that you have is in a chapter of your life. It's not your whole life. And you've done some great work in the film world. And I would think that would be because it's not Wall Street, it's artistry and movies and film. I would think that you would have possibly a path back, because there's a lot of different people in Hollywood that have things happen to them.
There's a lot of people with a hell of a lot worse things that they've done, legitimately have done. And
Yeah.
there's a hell of a lot of people that have done a lot of bad things that people know about, and they continue to go on and work.
Yeah.
Um, part, for me, it was important to get. I said, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to remove the government press releases. I'm not going to.
Hmm.
When I got my sentence, they didn't put a press release out about that.
Hmm.
Why? If they're being fair and is just reporting news, when they put the press release out about my sentence, no, because it didn't look good for them.
Right. Not on their side. Right.
No. So, that stuff is what it is. I work although I'm in a creative business, I work in the business end of it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, a lot of times the financial end, not just, I raised money in the past, but like, um, planning, like how money is going to be spent,
Hmm.
um, putting the actual package together. This is what we need here, 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 here.
Hmm.
So I won't raise money. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to do any of that. I could ask to do it through my probation officer if I wanted to, but I have no interest in raising money. I never liked raising money, but
Yeah.
I do um, make sure people stay on schedule. So what I've done, and I did it throughout this to make it easy, because I don't want to be on bank accounts. So I just need reports. I need to know the plan. I need to help create the plan. And then
Hmm.
when we're making a movie, I get reports and I can see where the spending is, and I can determine where we're spending too much, where we got to cut back.
Hmm. So you just categorize everything that
Yeah.
has to happen in the film and make sure that they have the money
Yeah.
to make
And
it
there's people
happen
that
as it goes through so that they don't not have any money at the end. I get it.
Yeah, and there's people that I worked with that I worked with before, and there's people that I started working with afterwards,
Yeah.
that like me and trust me, and
That's
everything
great.
I did was on my reputation in the
Yeah.
business, so it was a big hit when this happened,
Oh, for sure.
and I was
Yeah.
somebody that was so focused on what other people thought,
Hmm.
and so that's one of the other good things I think about this. It was such an irrational fear of what other people think, that when this happened, it was like,
Yeah. You hit the rock bottom. You got to step back up and it does,
Google yourself.
that you don't have to worry about that anymore.
What can you do here? This is
Yeah,
this is
I remember when I had a lot of money and I thought, gosh, what if I lost it all? And then when you do lose it all, well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. No more of that fear.
no.
I'm gonna worry about something else. But
So and there's some things I'm working on, um, in this realm,
Mhm.
and I think I've told you this. Well, I'm going to talk to you about that at some point. Of getting attention to a lot of this stuff. One of the things when I was at the state, that I quickly realized was there were so many kids there
Mhm.
that a lot of them were guilty,
Mhm.
but they were there for so much worse than they did. They
Mhm.
were way
Yeah,
overcharged.
overcharged. Yep.
Yeah, and other people, maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Who knows? But the one thing that was consistent was, regardless of the situation, most people were overcharged, taken advantage of, leveraged into the situation that they
Mhm.
were in, and that's hard. And I there's so many elements that people don't see, the behind the scenes stuff, the family stuff, how they're affected. Um, people think on the white collar and they just think, oh, rich asshole. That's usually what they think.
Mhm.
But until it happens to you, people don't really understand that it's not just that there's so many other pieces to it and things. And I wish there was, a better system in place to keep people accountable, but to focus on the people that get hurt.
Mhm.
Destroying somebody's life so they can't work again, and they can't make money when there are victims involved makes no sense. I don't think
Mhm.
the victims want that. You can
Right.
very easily, they monitor everything. They can very easily monitor you and every dime that you make. And if you can make good money, you can pay people back.
Mhm.
Why not do that instead of you
Destruction.
get the headlines and jail time? And it just
Right.
doesn't make,
Yeah.
doesn't make a lot of sense. And I wish there was a better way, and I hope there is. And
Well, I mean, it's one of those things, John, where the re-entering society after something happens to you like this and it's made so public, uh, you know, people have trouble with housing.
hmm,
Um, because you've got to put down, a lot of times it's illegal to discriminate against you. So that's the really bad part of it. It's really actually legal to discriminate. It's legal to not give you a job because of your record. It's legal to debank you. It's legal for them to just say, "Ah, we don't want you. We don't like what happened to you, so you can't bank here." And the community part of it is that you have this situation where you have the scarlet letter F on your head, and you have to figure out how to live with that and own a story so that you can be somebody again and not be hiding in a corner. So all those different things are a lot of moving parts,
Hmm.
and they're stacked to where what you're talking about is we don't necessarily have to destroy somebody when they get out and then just push them back. Um, if you can't get housing and you end up in the worst part of town, that's bad. And you're in the worst part of town, and how do you get out of that? So there's so many pieces to it, but there are ways I think that it could, if people were more aware of it, that people would want to make it better because it's broken,
Hmm.
system's broken, process is broken. But because it's broken, there are things that people can do to fix it if people know more about it. I just don't think enough people know about how bad things can get when
Hmm.
somebody has to go through a system that basically strips you down to, your rock bottom moment. And then you have to try to get back. And it's a tough thing.
Hmm.
But going through all that, John, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through all this that you've experienced?
I think I've learned a whole heck of a lot. That's for sure. I think um, in business, I took away that um, just to document stuff. I didn't document a lot of things, even conversations, just following up with a conversation. Hey, based on this conversation, little stuff like that, which could have helped me tremendously. I think in my personal life, um, like I said, some of it sucks because you realize some people just turn their back on you, and some family, and the way some people act is difficult because it's just hurtful. Um, and they're looking from their perspective, and you're looking from yours. But I think you learn who the people that really care about you are, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest takeaway in all of it, and I think I throughout this whole thing, I would tell my wife all the time, I'm not going to let them make me like them because there's a lot of things I wanted to say or do and be more,
Mm-hmm.
you know, angry at when speaking about it. But I said, I'm not going to do what they do. I'm not going to be them. Um, but I think, and I would always say, I have my wife who stood by me through all of this, and she went through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Making people don't see the little things that are involved in the community that she's affected by.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she has her business. She's a photographer. Luckily, her business has done well, but you know, she's gone through a lot, and then the things your kids go through. But I've said, if I have them behind me, then hopefully I have other people that are. But if I
Mm-hmm.
don't, as long as I have them, that's my world. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the
That's a
biggest.
strong takeaway. You find out who the people are that are with you, and if
Mhm.
you got your family, that's a lot of everything,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's a big deal.
it is. It is.
I second that. Wow, what a what a thing, John, that you experienced, and then to have all that ugliness and end up with a fair judge is incredible. That all
Yeah,
happened the way it
it's
did.
incredibly. I want to write a letter to him, but I can't until I think I'm off. But
Yeah.
my wife said it too. I can't explain. Again, I've never been in this situation before, but when I'm giving my allocution and speaking to him, my wife said it too. He just had like kind eyes. He looked like he
Hmm.
actually cared about me as a person,
Hmm. You
and that's
got it.
like I'm just I will, and it's not. He could have done that and given me a year,
Yeah.
because as you know, they get what they get.
Did
And
he already know you'd been through hell?
yeah, so he could have done a lot, and I still would have been grateful to him. But he just I feel like he really took me and my family into account, which they say that they're supposed to, but so
But
many don't.
rarely it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, as a matter of fact, there was one particular investor that was at my sentencing
Mhm.
that, as I got up to give my allocution, he started to record me, and the judge caught him and was pissed and said, "If you do that again, you're out of here." And I don't know if that had anything to do with anything, but he just he was very, just what the guy said. He was
Fair.
fair.
It was fair.
He did what he thought was right and didn't really care what anybody
Didn't
else.
let anybody pressure him.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's huge,
yeah.
huge. Well, speaking about gratitude, I love the fact that Homestead Financial Home Mortgage lets me use this podcast studio. If you've got home mortgage needs out there, Greg Aftiav, he's your guy. He knows it all. If you're looking for a book, get it. It's Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, and Finally Breaking Free. It's the story of my world. And if you want to know anything about me, go to brentcassity.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. And if you want to see all the episodes, you can see it on all the platforms, but you can also go to nightmaresuccess.com to get a little bit further background. And as I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. John, man, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, and you got it, man. You made it to the other side and you survived. And I think you're going to go on and do some things that we're going to be reading more about all the stuff that you do. And this is just a chapter.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Brent. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, folks, Nightmare Success, in and out.